Good morning, everybody. My name is Christine Sheritz. I'm the professor for this course. And so I wanted to just introduce Module 2. So, Module 2 is all about diverse learners. And for this module, you are going to read Chapter 2 of your textbook. It is called Teaching All Students. And in this chapter, you're going to read about the composition of today's classrooms and how we as reading teachers can meet the needs of all learners. And so you're going to read about English second language learners, students with dyslexia, students that come from high poverty backgrounds, and just read about all of these different learners. But I want you to think about seeing this not from a deficit perspective, but seeing it as our Lord Jesus sees it. And that is seeing it as a just as a makeup of diversity and seeing it from a perspective of God's given us lots of different people and lots of different children or adults, if you teach adults. And we just need to think about different ways that we can diversify our classroom and meet the needs of each student. So I wanted to just remind you of a couple things that you need to do this week for Module 2. So for Module 2, you have 2 assignments. First is a discussion board. And for this week, you need to share 2 books that you believe would be appropriate for a diverse classroom. So you could share books that you think would be appropriate for children, maybe English second language learners, students that come from a maybe a high poverty background, students that maybe have some kind of a visual impairment or a learning disability or dyslexia, and you need to explain how you would use these books, how you would support, or how these books would support the learner. And then, of course, you need to react to 2 of your colleagues' posts. Okay, so this week it's a video post. Okay, so don't forget about that. The other assignment is you are going to read an article and you need to analyze the article, synthesize the information in the article, and then critique it. And in Module 2, it explains exactly what you need to write about. Now, if you remember last week, I sent you additional articles that you can look under because there's a bank of articles under Module 2. But I'm new to teaching this course. I noticed that some of the articles were over 5 years old. And so I added some additional articles. So now, if there's an article that you just really love, but it has to be peer reviewed article, send it to me and let me look it over. And if it's something that I feel that would be appropriate, I'll let you read that, okay? I'm open to that, okay? We're all about differentiation and making it appropriate for you and what you need as a learner, okay? So those are your 2 assignments this week. I wanted to show you 2 things that I think will be interesting. I hope it'll be interesting to you. So the first thing that I want to show you is a presentation that I actually shared when I was presented to some teachers in the Bureau of Indian Education, and I worked with, and I'm still working with some teachers, Native American teachers, and I actually I'm working with a school that's at the bottom of the Grand Canyon. And so there's a school that have about 80 students, and they're literally at the bottom of the Grand Canyon. So when you think about high poverty, this is a very high poverty school and has a lot of very diverse learners in it. And so one of the questions that I asked the teachers as I was talking to them is, do you believe that literacy is a social justice issue? Do you believe that it's a basic human right? And if you do, how's that going to change how you teach? I personally believe it is. I believe that it is a basic human right. And if we believe in social justice, then we need to ensure that all students can read. This is the current NAEP score. So this is one of the only tests that is nationwide. NAEP is given in 4th, 8th, and 12th grade. and I'm going to be sending you the link to the NAEP scores. But here is a synopsis of the NAEP scores for fourth grade. So we can see that in 2009, we had 24% of kids were proficient, 7% were advanced. In 2017, we had 27%. Now I'm going to show you 2022 here in a second. Here we have below basic scores, and you can see that we have white, Asian, Black, and Hispanic. So these are the percentages that are below basic. Now we have our English language learners, our students with disabilities, and these are students that are free and reduced lunches. So we can see the gap in reading scores and how right now, if we look at this, 50% of Black students are below basic in reading, 46% of Hispanic students below basic in reading, 22% of white students below basic, 16% of Asian students. That is a big gap. English language learners, 68% are below basic. Students with disabilities, 71%. Sorry, my husband's behind me. And 46% are of our free and reduced lunches. So that's really a staggering statistics. Now, let me show you another thing I want you to look at, and that is with NAEP. And I'll show you here where the NAEP scores are. And so if you are interested in looking at NAEP scores, you can look them up here. So here are the NAEP scores. And you can go to reading. And I'm just realizing that you can't see what I'm seeing. So I'm going to try again. And I will send you this tab so that you can kind of see everything I'm seeing. Okay, so I'm going to stop presenting and I'm going to try this one. Maybe this will work. Here we go. Try this. There we go. If first you don't succeed, try again. Okay, so here we go, NAEP. And I'm going to go to reading. Here we have highlights. And so I'm clicking on highlights here. And we can see the highlights for 2017. We have the grade levels. We have 8th grade. And I'm going to go down here a little bit because this is 2022 scores. So change in average scores between 2019 and 2022. We can see that, and this is kind of the impact of COVID. These are all the states. So if you see this, that means there's no change. This means there's decrease. So 30 states decreased, 22 had no significant change. No state increased from 2019 to 2022. No one. DS, I'm trying to find DS right here. Department of Defense schools. I just retired from being a principal in Department of Defense schools. No change. So that's, if you don't know what DS schools, that's Department of Defense. I will say we stayed open the whole time during COVID. We did not shut down. So that's something to look at. So I just wanted you to see this so that you can look at NAEP scores. I'm going to send you this link and it'll give you a little bit of information to kind of see where everything is at according to states and so forth. Now, so you see that and you're like, well, this is pretty dismal. But what I want you to know is some important information. So even though we can see those scores and that looks pretty dismal, here's what we know about what research shows us. Our research shows us that almost all students have the cognitive capability to read. As a matter of fact, 95% of elementary students, regardless of background, are cognitively capable of learning to read when they receive direct, explicit instruction. So, only about 5% of kids struggle, have severe cognitive impairments that are so severe that they cannot learn to read. So that's 95%. So where's the disconnect? Where's the disconnect that since we have in some categories, we have 60% of kids that are not proficient? You know, that's what we need to think about. Well, what we're going to be talking about some of this class is, the science of reading and the accumulated body of evidence that shows us what kids need in order to read. And a lot of that is, that our brains are not naturally wired to read, that students need direct, explicit, systematic instruction to learn to read. This is the way it is. They need a teacher. They need someone to teach them. To speak, our brains are naturally wired to learn language through speaking, but not reading. And so we're going to talk about that in this class, and I'll be adding a few things to your textbook. But I do want you to, when you think about diversity, when you think about maybe you think of it as a challenge, I don't want you to look at it from a deficit perspective, but I want you to look at it as God's made all different kinds of people with lots of different diversity. If I can differentiate, then, my students have the cognitive capability. I just have to find the direct, explicit, systematic instruction that they need in order to be successful readers. So, as you read this chapter, sometimes we can read this and it's like, man, this is daunting. It can be daunting, but it can also be exciting as we think about it's a challenge that God has given us as educators. So that is that's module 2 in a nutshell. And I am looking forward to what you guys have to say about this module. And if you, like I said, if you have any articles that maybe you want to read that is not in that shell, let me know and send it to me ahead of time so I can look over it. Okay, have a good day.